What's up, nerds and nerdettes and wee little nerdlings all? It's your buddy Big Johnny G for Two Gun Pixie presents Legendary Gaming.
Shut up and sit down.
Hey, it's Midday, this is Monologue, and it's Monday. Well, actually, one of those things is true. This is a monologue. I mean, I'm not filming this on Monday. It's not midday. And the chances that you're actually watching this on midday on a Monday is low. Time. It's all a matter of funny perspective, isn't it? All right, well, today I want to talk about an aspect of RPGing that, well, for me personally, was something that mutated over the many decades that I've been involved in this absolutely awesome hobby. What I mean, well, you already saw the thumbnail. It's not like I'm building up to a surprise or anything. No, so this is talking about mind's eye theater, so to speak, to borrow a phrase from White Wolf Publishing and their RPG line with the World of Darkness. Their live action, their LARPing, it was called Mind's Eye Theater. To borrow that phrase for something else, versus, does it have to be versus? Sounds so confrontational. or tabletop building. Yeah, that's right. Is this what's better for you? What's better for you? Mind's Eye Theater gaming or tabletop 3D environment building? Do you have a preference? Do you do one over the other? And if so, is that the way you prefer to do things, right? Right? Yeah, see what I'm getting to. All right, so myself, my earliest concepts, memories of playing Dungeons and Dragons was completely and absolutely just theater of the mind. Everything was just imagination happening up in here. Well, when I started DMing, about 2 years after I discovered the game, I realized the importance of graph paper, which is something I don't remember my original Dungeon Master really caring about or being big about, at least not with us. He abandoned us to go play with others. Dick. So I discovered the use of graph paper, because now that I took over DMing, at that point, I had to start making some adventures. And I realized how important the graph paper was, but also by reading the rules myself, I found out the importance of having a mapper in the party. Now, the big problem with this was trying to explain, and this seems like, without overusing a word I overuse, but I do mean it quite accurately, and that's literally every time we played, I was explaining to the players how to map. Like if I say a corridor goes 60 feet north and then makes a sharp 90-degree a sharp 90-degree turn to the east. So they'll draw up to 60 feet, but then they'll count when it turns, they would count the bottom line as 60, not the top line. So everything they were doing was 70 or 65 feet, depending on whether it was a 5 or some of the early basic D&D and some of the early AD&D stuff. The maps were still using a 10 foot grid mark. Some of them did. So it was either 10 feet off or it was 5 feet off every single time. And you didn't notice until you give them a direction after they've been bounding around this dungeon for a while, and they go, "Oh, John, that's a brick wall. I can't go there." "What do you mean you can't go there?" I'm looking at my DM screen map. I'm like, that should be perfectly fine. Should be 20 feet away from a wall. Let me see your map. And that's what you see. Everything is one grid off. And every game, having to explain to the players, when I say 60 feet, you go by the line that's going to turn. It's turning east or west, left or right, however I direct it. in your mapping, it's going to be the top line is going to be the max distance here. I still think I got it wrong constantly. Then I got this bug in me one day when I was about maybe 14, I think. Maybe that sounds about right. I got this bug in me that I wanted to build something. So I talked to my dad, and we went down to the lumber yard, and he got me a big, huge, I think it was like 2x2, or I think it was 3x3, maybe square plywood. And then he got me a whole bunch of 2x4s. And I used my dad's tools to just cut the 2x4s down into walls. And I made this maze, and a couple of parts where the walls came off, so I could, they slipped in very nice and tight. A couple of the pieces I could take them out and move them a bit. I mean, it wasn't fancy or anything. Geez, I wish it was. But it was my first attempt of giving my players. And the reason I thought of this, I don't remember why I wanted to do the build, what bug got in me about that. But what I was thinking about was prior to this, we usually play Dungeons & Dragons in the courtyard of my building, and on rainy days we come into the building itself, and there was black and white tile floor pieces in my lobby, and I started using them with some Grenadier and Ralph Parther pewter miniatures I got for official Dungeons & Dragons stuff, and I started using them to represent where the players where they were and where the enemies were on this little black and white floor tile grid. But that is why I wanted to have something more permanent. Again, why I decided I had to be this handyman and build it. But it worked. It was nice. It was good. The guys all loved it. Everyone fucking loved that thing. I got used many times in several different ways and capacities, and it was a lot of fun. But you see, now here we go. So we went from my very first games in basic, not doing anything, just think of it. It's all in your mind. You imagine it. Thank God I don't have aphantasia. And then from there we went to the graph paper, and then to tiles in the lobby of my building, up to this wooden thing my dad let me build. And that was it. We use that sometimes, because even with a couple of parts that could be taken out, it still wasn't versatile enough. So unfortunately, it didn't get used as much as I had wished. Like, hindsight, could have made it more versatile. Maybe I could have, got some hinges, so I could open and close walls, and I don't know. But anyway, so after that, we kind of just went back to graph paper. And I wasn't even using the miniatures. I stopped buying them. I only had like maybe 4 boxes of some Grenadier and Ralph Parther stuff. But it was just all graph paper, and different groups handled graphing and mapping differently. But that's the way it was until that one Christmas, about maybe 2004, 2005 maybe. And that's when the group I was running with at the time, they decided to chip in some money and buy some Dwarven Forge miniature stuff for me. It was a passage set, and it was the combined passage and hallway set, deluxe thing I got. And I loved it. I mean, God, who wouldn't? What DM worth his salt, or not even worth his salt or hers, would not be like, oh, that is freaking cool, because it was. And that changed my DMing, because now I was so into these terrain pieces. And from there, it just grew. I bought a couple more sets myself over the time, which kind of grew it a little bit. And it's been mentioned a couple of times on the show whenever it needs to come up, but I lost everything. In 2009, there was an apartment fire, and so I lost everything. And when we got a chance to move back in, when everything was refurbished, there was a New York Comic Con. Actually, they weren't called Comic Cons yet. It was at the Javits Center, It wasn't officially called New York Comic Con. It had some other name, Comic and Sci-Fi Expo. I don't remember. But it was there. It was then. I went there with a ton of money, thinking to myself, I have to rebuild. I have to rebuild my game room, my RPG stuff, my board game. I got to rebuild. So I had a few $100s with me. And I went there and met these guys who had a new store at the time out of Long Island called Legendary Terrain. And besides being a comic book, I think they did some comic book stuff. Maybe not. Maybe just all gaming stuff. But they had terrain stuff that they printed up themselves. Nice stuff. So I told them what happened to me. And I even showed them pictures. I'm like, dude, I'm not BSing you. I mean, this is it. It was even in the newspaper and everything. And they saw my picture, so they knew. They knew I wasn't like conning them or anything. So they totally went out of their way to help me out. They get me almost half off deal on everything. They got me this huge set. And I liked it. I did. And I had more of that than I ever had at the Dwarven Forge. But honestly, almost all my Dwarven Forges, don't know what the hell that was, but almost all my Dwarven Forge stuff survived the fire. Because it was all boxed and it was in a back room that the fire didn't get to because the door was closed. That's why it's important to always keep doors closed. True story. So I had so much stuff. I had more than enough to build that huge table. So that did me good for a long time. But recently, as of last year, I guess I noticed it about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, knowing that I was going to be taking the characters from the current module, Forge of Fury they were in, into Speaker of the Dreams, which takes place in a town. I know I didn't have any town stuff, but Warlock Tiles by WizKids had a whole town square stuff. So I ended up buying tons and tons of those boxes. I had a year and a half, almost 2, to prepare for the campaign, and thank God I did, because I got more than enough Warlock town square stuff to build an impressive 2-table wide section of Brindenford. Now here's the thing. I've noticed over the years, and I mean over the years, I don't mean just like I woke up last week and this occurred to me. So I've noticed over the years that the more elaborate the builds are, on the one hand, the players are absolutely blown away. I mean, they love my DMing style. They love my storytelling. They love the atmosphere that I bring and I put together. And on top of that, now, for the last 2 years, I've been doing these epic freaking builds. And it's not to impress them. It's literally just to showcase the adventure we're doing, or at least whatever part of it we're doing that session, I truly love doing these builds. But the amount of time, I mean, I'm taking like 2 to 3 days, a couple of hours each night before game day to get these builds ready. But another thing is that sometimes in the middle of gameplay, things can get bogged down, right? So with the city, it didn't happen that much because everything is laid out there. Even the houses and the buildings and everything I had prepared. I had furniture in them. I had people working in there. I had citizens shopping in these places. I had it taken care of. But in the dungeon stuff, now, at first, I realized that the party was seeing the entire dungeon level, and I didn't like that. Especially there was one level, they pretty much cleared everything, but they didn't go to this one section. They were ready to leave, and everyone's like, well, not everyone, but a couple of people in the party are like, hey, what about that section over there with the river? We didn't check that out yet. And that bugged me. It really, really did. And the Warlock tiles, one of the things they're really good at is sectioning. So after that, what I started doing with the dungeon stuff, it was appropriate, I was building by room by room, and the corridors in between them. And then I would only lay the stuff out when the party got there within line of sight that they could see things. That worked out great. I loved it. The party loved it. That added time. That took away gaming time. Now, yeah, everything was set up. I had miniatures and furniture and terrain in there, but still, it it did take away from actual gaming time to do that. So that's the balance, I think, right? So when you're working with just mind's eye theater or, just basic stuff, it doesn't have to be just imagination. Like maybe some dry erase, right? Some dry erase stuff with graph paper, and that's it. You got that level of gameplay, and everything is quick, everything is easy. But you don't have the eye candy. I mean, that's what it is, right? But with the building stuff, boom, there you go. I mean, it is pure eye candy. But it's more than eye candy because it's functional. It really does help to have everything built up and ready for the players to go, and to be able to tell them like I do, hey, gang, anything you see in this room, whether it's a sack, whether it's a table, whether it's a chair, a bunch of chains in the corner, whatever you see in the room when you go in there, that is really there for you to interact with. That speaks volumes, because now my players know exactly what's in there. They can like Tom can tell me, John, I'm going to jump over that chair, and when I jump over it, I want to grab it, because he does crazy things like this, and I'll grab it and I'd use it as a weapon. I'm going to swing it over his head or something like that. The players don't have to stop and ask me with mind's eye theater style, John, is this in the room? Is there a sack of salt, flour in the room? John, you say this is a kitchen. Is there a teapot? Are there plates? Now, thanks to, especially the Warlock tile gets a lot of the little things in there. I mean, they even have an outhouse and dirty plates. But now that it's there, I can literally just tell the guys, listen, anything that goes in the room that's there, you can interact with, or at least try to. So there's this balance between the quickness, the satisfaction of the speed of just mind's eye theater versus the combination of eye candy, but it's also versatile. I'm addicted to the building stuff now. I really am. But what do you think? What do you think? And put in the comments whether you're commenting as a dungeon master, game master, storyteller type, or from the perspective of a player. Because I think that makes a difference. I'm not sure how. We'll see in the comments. But yeah, get that in the comments. Let everyone see what you think. Let me know what you think. All right? So that's it. Mind's Eye Gaming versus tabletop build. To me, if it's possible, it's always going to be a tabletop build. But what do you think? What do you think? Thanks for joining me.